How's it going, everyone? So this video is going to be currently what I'm running on Stam, sorc in murkmire. I'm not sure how the audio is going to be. Might be different or messed up because I've changed some things around recently. So yeah, this is a heavy armor 2H build, dual wield. Could be either or. Like, I'm running main bar 2H, but you could do dual wield, and I do. I swap back and forth depending on, I guess, if I'm playing with others or if I'm playing solo. Because dual wield is probably better than 2H right now. I mean, if you just look at what people are running in Cyrodiil, most people are running dual wield. But I like 2H more, so I tend to run 2H. It's just more satisfying, I guess. I don't know. I'm odd, but regardless, like I said, this is a heavy armor build, and it's a pretty tanky build. It's mainly meant to heal, I guess. Like, it's just focused on heals, being able to take a lot of damage, because people are very tanky in this meta. And the fights are a lot longer most of the time. And the game is just very laggy. The performance is awful in Cyrodiil for most people that I talk to, and myself included. And it's just difficult, so this isn't the most challenging build, I guess, but honestly, that all goes out the window when the game performs like this. And for the most of the time that I play, it's like this. So, that being said, I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. First thing I'm going to say here is I'm going to post a picture up, I guess, or put a picture up on the screen when I go over the stats of what some of the stats look like, because I'm not running the correct food. I guess, and you could run this food, dubious. But mainly I'm using the Artaeum takeaway broth. It's expensive, so I'm not just gonna pop one right now. Cause it's like 30k to make 4 of them, and I'm not sure I'm gonna go back into PvP after this. I don't know, we'll see how it looks. But dubious works fine as well. Mainly the Artaeum broth is good, I think, on any build not using Bone Pirate, because it doesn't work with Bone Pirate. But any build not using Bone Pirate, this stuff would be the best. Any stamina build, because of the health recovery mainly. Like, when you compare these two, they're very similar. You get 200 more health with Artaeum, you get 300 more stamina, maybe 250. The recovery is the same, and then you get 351 health recovery, so it's very good. So I'm going to go over my stats real quick, I guess. And also in this video, I'm going to go over 2 different setups that I'm using. One of which is kind of better for dual wield, more damage even, but it's not as practical. And then the other setup is a little easier to get, and just as good, and honestly, I've been running it more often. So I'll go over that in a second. So for this first setup, I'll probably post the picture on screen sometime right now. And the stats are very similar with the other food. The only thing really different is the health recovery, and that's basically what the health recovery gets up to. Spoiler alert, I'm running Troll King. I mean, you could probably tell. That's what the health recovery gets up to. Normally it sits at about 1700 on this build with the Artaeum takeaway broth, and without it, it sits around what it's at right here, 1100. So it's actually higher with the Artaeum food than my Stam recovery. Other than that, 3k weapon damage, 25% crit, 3k crit resistance, and 35,000 max stam, almost 36 with the Artame Broth, or I think it's like 35,600. The health normally sits at 22,500, but this campaign has Emp right now. That's the only thing it has though, so no other buffs, and I'm not going to change to Vivek. I'm just not going to right now. Then what else? The weapon crit goes up to 35%, 40% on the other setup. And the resistance is 20,600. As far as what I'm running, like I said, Troll King. First set is 7th Legion. This is weapon damage, health recovery, weapon crit. And when you take damage, you gain 500 weapon damage for 5 seconds and heal for 1400 if it's gold. So this set's pretty effective. The reason I went with this, or the reason I was kind of trying it out in the first place, was just because normally I'd go with Fury. I like Fury. I think it's one of the best heavy armor sets in the game. What's the other one? Berserking Warrior, that's another great one. But that also comes from a trial. Either way, this set's pretty good. And it gives me health recovery, it gives me crit that Fury doesn't. Because a lot of people right now are running similar builds, with this being a heavy armor meta. And a lot of people are running Spriggans and Fury. And that's a solid build. I've ran it in the past. There's a couple things stopping me from running that though. First of all, I'm using the Steed. Now, if you're not playing solo, you might not want to use the Steed. If you're playing with a group, then the Crit Mundus, the Thief, might be better, or the Warrior, or even the Lover. All of those will give you more damage, but heavy armor lacks, like, crit. But, being I play solo, the speed and health recovery, to pair with everything else that I'm doing to buff health recovery, I think it helps a lot. And, Spriggans and Fury, just, you really come out with like 20% crit unless you run the Crit Mundus. And other classes can do it, like a Nightblade, or maybe a DK, or anybody that wants to slot Savagery. But even with Savagery, it's still only going to come out to 30%. So having this extra crit bonus helps a lot. The health recovery obviously pairs well. The weapon damage, it's all good. Then Spriggans is the next set. Spriggans is very good, obviously. Most people know this. And both of these sets actually drop in Bankerai if you're new and you're like trying to farm sets. And this build could work pretty good on anything, I think. You might have to change the Mundus or certain things. But I'd say it would work on anything. You might need more like recovery, but being it's heavy armor, 1300 recovery is never an issue for me, like never. Just heavy attack, whatever, it helps a lot. And Dark Deal, obviously, when they changed it, you still get a fair amount of stamina, but you also get stamina restored over 20 seconds, which is helpful. Honestly, they nerfed it, but I kind of like it a little better now. I don't know, it's kind of weird, but I do. So on this particular setup, I'm using full impen and 6 stam glyphs, 1 health, and the jewelry's all robust. 2 Spriggans, 1 7th Legion just to fit it in, which was 2 medium and 5 heavy. That's why I did it like that. And if you were gonna run a healthy piece of jewelry instead of robust, you could just take this health glyph and make it a stam glyph. And if you want more health, you could just swap the glyph to the legs, chest, or head. The weapons are Spriggan's Greatsword, Nirnhoned with weapon damage enchant, and Master's dual wield. Axes would be better, but I only have dagger still, and I use a shock and a disease damage. You could use 2 shock, 2 disease. Disease is minor defile. Shock, I think, is vulnerability, which gives you like an 8% damage buff. I don't use poisons currently. The other options here are, if you don't have arena weapons, you would just want to go with just Spriggan's dual wield, or you could change the build around and run like 2 heavy monster pieces, like the Troll King's shoulders, or the pauldrons, and then go with 3 Spriggan's jewelry, Spriggan's belt and hands, and then 7th Legion weapons in the front and back bar. But either way, if you don't have arena weapons, you should slot like the same weapons on the back bar as you have on the front bar. Or you could go with Death's Wind for more resistance. Death's Wind dual wield. I mean, there's multiple options. The other option is Black Rose. So Black Rose dual wield makes you very tanky. I kind of like the damage buff I get from the Master dual wield, but when you use Quick Cloak, you get 30% damage reduction in the form of major protection. So these are pretty OP, honestly. When somebody attacks me, if somebody tries to gank me or something and I have these on, I usually get up, hit this first, block, and then vigor. So I have a huge like damage mitigation from the proc of the weapons, and then I'll heal with that and proc Troll King and everything else. But again, personally, I kind of like more damage with the Master's dual wield. And if you're gonna run this as dual wield as the main damage bar, either of these setups that I'm gonna talk about, if you're gonna run dual wield as the main damage bar, you definitely want to go with the same set on both bars. I mean, you could run a different 2H, but it really wouldn't matter. So you want like Spriggan's dual wield, for example. And as far as the skills go, you would just swap out Steel Tornado and then for the CC, maybe use Trap Beast or Rune Prison. I can actually just show it real fast. Why not? This is kind of how I'd set it up on my dual wield damage bar if I was going with dual wield. Something like this, and then I would do Dark Deal and just my other buffs on my back bar, really. I'll go over this more when I talk about the skills, but I'm just trying to show that you can easily run this as dual wield if you want to. This is kind of how I do it open world, just so I can trip people up with the trap. But if I'm dueling, I always go with Rune Prison because it's better to have a CC against people, like in duels, I think, because most people dueling now are pretty good. And if you don't have a CC and you get into trouble, it might be hard to kill them. So now that I'm done with that, just switch this back. I'll go over the other setup real quick, which again can be run as dual wield if you want. And then I'll go over the skills a little bit more. So this build is similar, except it's a little more difficult to run, I guess. It's got a little more damage, I think, and I don't know, it's a solid build. I think that I like it a little better than the other build, but again, I've just been swapping back and forth. For the last week or so, I've been running 7th and Spriggan's, and then before that, I had been running this. Last night I swapped to this setup that I'm going to show in a second. And I actually favor this more if I'm running dual wield as a main damage bar and like 2H as the buff bar. I favor this build a little more because I'll go into it in a second, I guess. The other thing is, with this, you need to transmute the jewelry. So, yeah, that might be difficult for some people. First set is Fury. I go with Fury weapons. Nernhoned, and this should be Disease and Shock. Troll King again, and then the next set is Night Mother. Night Mother's Gaze. This is a easy crafted set, but it's pretty effective. So when you deal critical damage, you apply Major Fracture to the enemy, reducing their physical resistance by 5280 for 6 seconds. So you don't have Fracture on a Stam sorc. Spriggans makes up for that on the other setup, but this is more than Spriggans. And with this particular setup, obviously it's a bit higher with the Artean Broth, but you get similar stats. You get a little less health recovery, you get more health, and roughly the same amount of stamina. You'll get more weapon damage, and you'll get... Wait a minute. What did I do here? Okay. You'll get more weapon damage, and you'll get more weapon crit. Same amount of resistance. A little less crit resistance because I'm running 2 infused on this. And yeah, it's very similar. I just think the damage is a little bit more because 7th Legion has that 2-second cooldown, and not even that, it's not a guarantee it's always going to proc. It's a guarantee Fury's going to proc, no matter who you're fighting, unless you're fighting like a low level, like, who doesn't have much knowledge of the game and doesn't have much crit, like 15% crit, like, then maybe it's not going to proc. But I fought healers before who were max CP and had it proc completely. And once it procs, it stays up because people have dots, especially when you're outnumbered or fighting a lot of people. Fury is a very solid set. 7th Legion, it's good and it procs a lot, but I just think Fury's a little bit more. Again, like I said, I like running this a little more with dual wield because with the AoEs from Steel Tornado, you can fracture everybody, and people in your group, if you're playing large scale, like, people might already have fracture, but Stam sorc doesn't. So if you're playing with a few people and like you have a DK with breath, then maybe it's not the best, but it's not always a guarantee that everybody's gonna get fractured. If you're running this build like this and you, here, I'll show this real quick. So with the potions I use to get Major Savagery, you have 39% crit. So if you Steel Tornado or your Hurricane or Cloak hits people, then they're gonna get fractured, and it means it's gonna be a lot more damage that everybody's gonna be dealing. So it's pretty solid. I've had a lot of good fights with this. Like I said, you just have to trait change the jewelry, and I use 2 axes on the back bar. The only downside is you can't use like Masters or Black Rose with this. I mean, you could if you were to run Night Mothers on 1 bar, but I really like having it on both bars, especially on the dual wield bar. The other thing was, I had been playing around with Werewolf a bit, and I still intend to. This game just gets frustrating sometimes, and I don't want to try anything new, but I've had a lot of good fights with Werewolf, and I think it's pretty solid here, because again, on the other build, with 7th Legion and Spriggans, you really wouldn't want to proc Werewolf off your back bar because you're using master weapons, and you wouldn't have the Spriggans 4 and 5 piece on that bar. But with this build, everything is up on both bars, so you can back bar Werewolf, and Werewolf is pretty good for taking, even like not being a tanky, even not being a Werewolf build, it's really good for taking down tanky people. I fought crazy Werewolf builds that are very strong, and it just deals a lot of damage. It has Defile, it has Fracture, which would kind of overlap with the Fracture on this build, but it's not always a guarantee it's going to be up. And again, this isn't a Werewolf build, so it's just kind of something that I use when I'm fighting like an extremely tanky healer. It's nice to Defile them, and then all the dots that werewolf has, like the fear that werewolf has. It's very good. I still want to make a main werewolf build, but playing open world, the game gets very frustrating. Mainly just performance, like the meta, any build I fight, if I lose to somebody, none of that bothers me. I just hate fighting lag. That's it. But what are you gonna do? That's how the game is for now. Maybe it'll change in the future. So for the potions, I use lingering health pots very rarely if I'm fighting a defile build, because this build is pretty damn tanky, and these potions are pretty important, so I try to use these all the time. Major savagery, health, and stamina. This is water hyacinth, mountain flower, and dragon thorn, I believe. And these are so important because every part of it is helpful. The savagery is really important. The health and the health recovery bonus is important, and obviously the stam and stam recovery. For the skills, I use dizzying swing, forward momentum, reverse slice, crit surge, bound armor, dawnbreaker of smiting, dark deal, hurricane, quick cloak, running slashes, vigor, and temporal guard. Again, if you don't have temporal guard, you could just go with werewolf on the back bar. Even on the 7th Legion build, you could slot werewolf just to get the stam recovery bonus. I mean, I don't know what else you could slot back here except for negate. And if you are playing in a group, it might be better to slot negate as like a support type thing. Other than that, I really personally wouldn't change anything. I know people that play in a group might drop crit surge. If that was the case, I would drop it for trap beast, or where is it? Accelerate for the minor force, or trap beast for the minor force. And that would be pretty solid for the damage, because 40% crit is a good amount of crit. And when you crit, you hit hard. This build hits very hard. The only people I have issues taking out are like heavy Templars, Magplars really, and just good players on builds like this that are very tanky, heavy armor. Like, it's not easy with dizzying swing, especially when the game is lagging. But when it's not, like I have the last solo clip I posted on my channel, like that would not have been possible if the game was lagging that day, and it just wasn't. It was a good day of like performance, part of it anyway. The night it always gets worse, at least for me. I think that's it. Scroll over the champion points real quick. And again, this isn't, or not again, I don't think I mentioned this, I might have. This isn't really a no CP build. I really do want to play Battlegrounds again, but I'm kind of stubborn, and right now I just want to open world solo, as difficult as it is. So once I start playing Battlegrounds, I'm probably going to make something for no CP, but I don't know how this would work in no CP, to be honest. I haven't tried it. So I'll just scroll over this real fast. If you were intending on backbarring werewolf, maybe put a couple points into Befoul to really throw Defile on those tankier builds. .32 into Blessed is pretty important, I think. This is just how I set it up. I know others do it differently. Anyway, if you have questions, post them, and I'll answer. Thanks for watching.